Hi, I hope everybody's doing great. In this lesson, we're going to do our own take on the classic Hello World program. Traditionally, Hello World is the first program you write when learning to code. For example, if you learn to program in C or C++ on a desktop, you may have written a simple program to write Hello World to the monitor. While it's possible to write to an LCD screen with an Arduino, we're going to blink an LED instead to make it simple for beginners. We'll get into using LCDs a little bit later. In this lesson, we're going to learn about a few things, including two basic electronic components, resistors and LEDs, and three functions you'll use a lot: pin mode, digital write, and delay. Before we get into coding, let's take a look at the schematic. Now here we can see the schematic's pretty simple. We have the LED, a series resistor, and just a jumper wire going to the Arduino board. Now, I want to talk a bit about LEDs real quick, okay? On an LED, you'll notice, if you take a close look at it, one of the sides of the plastic dome is flat, like it has part of it cut off almost. And that leg on that side is shorter. This is the cathode of the LED and always goes to the negative side, in this case, which would be ground. The anode, the opposite one, which has a longer leg, and in this schematic you can see there's a little bend in the leg there, is a positive side. And that goes to 5 volts, of course, with the resistor. You'll use LEDs a lot, so it's important to remember this. Now, speaking of that resistor, you don't ever want to use an LED without a resistor. If you do that, it's going to draw a lot of current, burn real bright, and then burn out pretty quickly. Now, you may be wondering how we pick the value of that resistor, or what the value even is. To decipher the value of a resistor, we need to look at its colored bands, or color code. Now, I have a nice tutorial on resistor color code here, and there's the link. So I'm not going to go into any detail, but I'll gloss over it real quick right now. The first band, the red one on the left, represents the first digit in the value of this resistor. In this case, red is 2. Actually, in every case in resistor color code, red equals 2. But just in case you can't tell, that is red. The second band on a resistor represents the second digit, which again is red, so it's 2. So far, we have a value of 22. The third band is a multiplier, and we can see here it's brown. And in this case, brown represents a multiplier of 10. So what we have is 22 times 10, or 220 ohms. And finally, that fourth band, that gold one, all the way on the right, is a tolerance. And gold is 10% tolerance. So back to the schematic. We can see we have the current limiting resistor on the anode, and also pin 8, which is going to put out 5 volts. Then we have the cathode of the LED grounded, which is going to put out 0 volts. So now that we have the schematic down, let's go write some code. So here we are in the Arduino IDE, ready to write some code. And as usual, when we first open up the IDE, we see these two functions here, setup and loop. And again, it is absolutely critical that you include these two functions. If you don't, your program will not compile. And it might be a good idea to practice typing them out every once in a while, just in case for some reason if they don't show up. But I'm going to leave it here. We got void setup and void loop ready to go. And we're going to start writing some code. Now, in setup, we're going to put things that only run once or happen once. So we want to blink an LED that's connected to pin 8. So the first thing that we need to do is tell the Arduino IDE which pin we're using and what that pin is, either an input or an output. And to do that, we're going to use a little function called pin mode. And we see here right away I type pin mode, and it changes color. And notice too that the P is lowercase and the M is a capital M. Now, this is something known as camel case, and if you don't type this exactly right, for example, if I were to type pin mode, it doesn't change color. Or if I were to capitalize the P instead of the M. So it's really important that when we're typing functions in Arduino that contain 2 words in their name, that we do it right, or we're going to get errors if we try to compile. So we got pin mode, and now pin mode takes 2 parameters. One of them is the pin, and that's just the number 8, because that's pin 8. Now we have to tell it too, either is this an input or an output. Now there is a third one, an input pull-up. We're not going to discuss that here. It's a little bit more advanced. But for now, a pin mode is either going to be an input or an output. And honestly, by default, all Arduino pins are inputs. And we want this to be an output. We want it to output 5 volts. So we need to specifically say output. And notice again how it changed color. And also notice how I had to type output, the second parameter, in all capital letters. If I don't do that, it doesn't change colors. And then I go to compile, and I get an error. Just to demonstrate, I'm going to verify it. And boom, I got an error. So to fix this, be sure, and I'm sure you'll make these mistakes, I did, but be sure that the second parameter is all capital. And we'll verify it again. Really, that's all we need in setup. That's all we need to do is set up pin 8 as an output. Now, we need to get that LED to blink.